Hi, my name is Jameel, and I'm a veteran esoteric scholar. And today I'm going to be going through some of my study and my research, and we're going to jump right to it. This is a brief paragraph on education that I discovered. I was going through a friend of mine had some notes over their house, and I was going through the notes, and I discovered this paragraph. Okay, accountability and accountability and higher standards have changed just about every aspect of education. Legislation has established an exigency to improve student achievement and an educational system that supports a culture of status quo and results in the failure of far too many students. This era of higher standards, greater accountability, and more at-risk students requires a new kind of school and district leader who can inspire teachers, parents, and the community to coalesce and provide better opportunities for all students to achieve at high levels. We must improve the way we prepare school leaders and ensure that they have an instructional focus rather than one of management. We must improve the professional growth we give our teachers and leaders and ensure that it is aligned with standards and the needs for school improvement. And finally, we must organize and run schools for the benefit of the students, not the comfort of the educators. So, moving forward, a lot of the educational material that I like to read is archaic. I prefer older books, but modern books do good. Like, one of my studies is law, and so this is a law dictionary, Black's Law Dictionary. And so I read through law dictionaries frequently, and interpretations have changed over the years. And I like to go listen to lectures of Supreme Court judges, Harvard judges, judges who lecture at Harvard and Yale, Princeton. I listen to what they say, and the older the interview is, the greater the knowledge tends to be. And I'll sit there and listen to these judges give lectures, and it's amazing because when somebody thinks of a judge, you usually think of somebody who's hard on an individual who expresses law. And I was listening to a judge speak one time, and this was at Harvard, and it was a Supreme Court judge, and the judge was saying that there's a town in California where the whole town is voting to give the prisoners more. The whole town is voting to keep prisoners in jail longer over tickets that they catch while they're in prison, and they want to give charges to these people. So if they're in prison and they get caught with some heroin in prison, they want to give them as much time as possible, not to help the individual correct themselves or correct their behavior, but in order to keep the town going and keep all the money going. You know, these guys are in prison for a long time. That's more money for the town. And the Supreme Court judge was saying that. He was saying, "Man, that's sick." That he was saying, I left the bench because of how sick that was. That somebody would would take an individual and criminalize them in order to make money off of them. And he said, "That's sick. I didn't want to be part of it." And so when I go and I listen to lectures, and I see the character, you can see common traits and common characters in all people of all fields. People who have great PhDs, who are in law, or who are in medicine, they may have the same perspectives that you have. This judge, that's the same. He was saying the same thing I was saying, and so that got me more interested in studying law. Then medicine is a study. This is a medical dictionary. Tabor Encyclopedic Medical Dictionary. And this is fascinating to me because I'll sit here and I'll look at pictures of anatomy and pathology and do a lot of research. And in order to interpret a medical dictionary, you have to know some Latin and you have to know some French, along with English. This is written in multiple different languages. You're looking at French, Latin, English. And I'll just sit down and read these And when you go to an Oxford dictionary and you compare the words, you see in medicine, one word means one thing, one definition means one thing. In law, when it comes to a law dictionary, you're talking in the study of jurisprudence, you're talking about legalese. Legalese means one thing, and then there's French and Latin within law. So what's said in a courtroom means something completely different outside. If you're outside at the park hanging out with your friends, you're not going by law dictionary, you're not going by legalese. You're going by regular English grammar. So what's said in a courtroom means one thing. What's said while you're with your friends, enjoying your friends at the park, that means one thing. Then if you're in a hospital, it can mean something completely different. So now I'm going to be looking into, now I've been currently doing some research on pro-social choice, and this involves a study of chimps. And they're doing studies on chimps, and they've been doing studies on chimps for a long time. And chimps have the ability to have pro-social and care about the others. Some chimps will make decisions that affects the other chimps in a greater way. Some chimps will only eat if the other chimps can eat. Some chimps don't care if the other chimps don't eat. Now, there's a study. There's a great study that was done at Yale many years ago, done at a lot of universities around the world, Yale being one of them, the rat cocaine experiment. And this is one of the greatest experiments to pay attention to, because scientists will inject a rat with cocaine or put liquid cocaine in the rat's food, in the rat's drinking water. And once the rat starts getting high off the cocaine, high off the stimulant, then the rat will start racing around. Sometimes their heart will explode and they'll die. But the rat will only want the coke. The rat will go without food. The rat will go without regular drink water just to get the cocaine. The rat will almost kill itself just to get the cocaine. And they did experiments to see, will the rat keep using the cocaine even if its children can't get food and water? And some of the rats would do it, some of the rats wouldn't. But that study taught me the aspect of the reward system. They show that the rat will do something just to get the reward of the cocaine. And when you look at human beings will make choices to get rewards, even if it's the wrong choice. So if a human being is getting monetary gain, or if a human being is getting drugs, same thing as the rat, or the human being is getting a sense of superiority, a sense of superiority complex of achievement and accomplishments, they will make less than moral decisions in order to attain that. And that's the rat. I learned that from the rat cocaine experience. And you can see people in corporations who will make choices that are not good at all. They'll make a choice to cut down a rainforest. They'll make a choice to put indigenous people into poverty and to put these people in a position where they're going to be in famine and death. And you think, in the corporate world, it's a economic decision, but in essence, they're leading people to death. They're leading destruction. All the thousands of animals in the rainforest are going to go to death based on their decision. It's not really a wholehearted decision that's in the best interest of people, but they still do it. That leads me back to the rat cocaine experiment. They're doing it. They want the reward. They want that position in the corporation. They want that feeling of superiority and power, right? And this gets into psychology with the inferiority complex, and how in the Western world people wear masks. They wear these superficial masks and whatnot just to get the benefits. One of my favorite authors, Sonika Shakur, that wrote the book Autobiography of the LA Gang Member, he had a segment where he was on, I think, Black Entertainment, and he said he had an analogy of the Dead Presidents album where they took a knife and put it in the ice, and the wolf started eating of they put blood on the knife, and a wolf came along and started licking the blood. And after the wolf started licking the blood, the wolf started bleeding to death from its tongue. And so the wolf was eating its own blood, and it was killing itself to get the blood. And that's what a lot of people who are in the inferiority superiority complex, they're destroying themselves in order to gain a sense of acceptance or gain a feeling of power or whatnot, or monetary gain. They suffer from fear of rejection. I got all kinds. I just go through all sorts of studies. Like that's what I do. I'm a researcher. I just sit here and just. That's all I know is research. Okay, moving forward, we're going to get into some books. Here's a book I'm looking at reading soon. This is called Once a Cop. Once a Cop, the Street, the Law, Two Worlds, One Man by Corey Pegas. It's about a man who formerly was on the streets selling drugs. He was formerly selling drugs, and then he turns into a police officer. I thought that was interesting. Here's some other reading material. The Education of a Coroner. Criminology is something I study. Looks interesting. This is a book I'm going to be reading soon. Valley of Genius. The Uncensored History of Silicon Valley. And as many people know, the Silicon Valley goes back to World War II and the development of the Defense Department. Then Healing Trauma. This is a book I ordered. I still haven't read it. Okay. Now, so my show, I have a show called Jameel's Show. And Jameel's Show, there's the Jameel Rawls show, then Jameel's Show. A lot of people might say, that doesn't make sense. Why would you be doing two different shows? The Jameel Rawls show is more about me and where I come from. I'm from Michigan, and I go out and I do research. I meet different sorts of people. Jameel's show is just based on my preference of research and the types of areas that I research into. And I have some, there's a Jameel Rawls show soundtrack where you see me with a rapper, and that was my best friend for many years. And he still raps. And he had an album, he had a demo tape, and it's an old demo tape that I helped him put together, and I use that for my show. And we lived directly right down the street from each other. Growing up, I grew up in an area called Muskegon Heights, and we lived right down the street from each other. And I went to a small school, a little school. What was it called? Kids Unlimited School. And every day after leaving the school, now I'm going to get into a little bit about explaining the Jameel Rawls show, I'm explaining my life a little bit. After leaving the school, I would go down the street to the gas station. The gas station is still there. And I'd get a white chocolate bar and a papaya juice every single day. And I ended up in the newspaper. And the local newspaper in the area came into the school and took a picture of all the children. And they took my picture and put it on the news and put it in the newspaper. And I remember growing up, my mother had it in the china cabinet. And I would always point at it and say, that's me in the newspaper. That's me in the newspaper. And there was me and the two other kids in the background. I always wondered, why did they pick me to put me in the newspaper? So I was born, how old would I have been? I would have been about 3 years old, 4 years old. So from a child, I was already in the newspaper. I thought to myself, how many people looked at that newspaper at that time? This was the late 80s. How many people looked at that newspaper and saw me in the newspaper and knew what school I was at? How many people in the area? Now that I'm older, I'm thinking about that. How many people saw me in the newspaper as a child? And these newspapers went all over the area. and wanted to know. They knew what school I was in. That always fascinated me. To this day, I no longer have the article, but somewhere it still exists. Hopefully one day I'll be able to get another copy of it. Okay. And now what we're going to be doing. Matter of fact, I have a book on the area, The Images of America, Muskegon. This is a book of Muskegon, Michigan. These are older pictures. This is the Amazon Knitting Company. It's an apartment today, and today it's the Amazon Apartments. And my great-grandmother used to live down at the beach. Right on the beach. And they show that in here. They show pictures of the beach here. Never, like you've never seen before. Real houses on the beach. And they moved these houses out of the area because of the erosion on the beach. Now, I'm also a parapsychologist. I study parapsychology with retrocognition, where if I go to a certain area of the world, no matter if it's local or foreign, just being in the area, I metaphysically pick up on the vibration and the energy of what's going on. And I can get glimpses of what's happened in these different places over time. And so I like to look at old pictures of the area I live in and then go find these areas and try to see what energy I can pick up. This area was better back then. Down at the lake, they had a Ferris wheel, and people would ride horses on the beach and all this stuff. And growing up, we didn't have any of that. And I'm looking at this old book, and I'm saying, how do these people have horses on the beach and cottages on the beach decades ago, and now all you got is a little ice cream shop? What happened? And Muskegon had more millionaires at one time than any other place in the world because of the lumber industry. A few families from New York moved here, and they started pillaging, the lumber. It was of course Indians here first, the American Indians, and French missionaries came in the area, and the French missionaries moved the native people out of the area by force or by promise, right? And so once the native people started leaving the area, then they started taking all the wood. My great-grandmother, her father, which would be my great-great-grandfather, was a French, on my mother's side, was a French missionary who was Catholic. He was a Catholic French missionary. And he came into this area, came into Muskegon. I think, of course, he came through New York first, and ended up in Muskegon. And he was French. And so I learned about how the Catholic priest, and the French missionaries came in and were the first European groups to settle in Michigan. Then later on, you had the more common pioneer groups that came in and started getting all the lumber and selling it and making millions and millions of dollars at that time, millions of dollars around the world. And Muskegon had more. There were more millionaires in Muskegon at one point than anywhere in the world, just because of the lumber industry. And all the families, all the streets here are named after the families. Like Wood Street is named after the Wood family. Wood Street is named after the Wood family. Hackley is the most popular name in Muskegon after Charles Hackley. And Charles Hackley is rumored to have been involved with what's his name, Billy the Kid. Now I don't know if that's true, but I heard somebody saying that Charles Hackley had a thing he had where he said pass it along, where he would be generous and give donations to people, and by fluke of chance he came across Billy the Kid and gave Billy the Kid some money at one point. That's something that's said. But Charles Hackley, of course, has the Hackley Library. And the Hackley family's still around. I don't think they live in Muskegon anymore, but the Hackley family's still around. But you have Hackley Street, Hackley Library, Hackley Hospital. Hackley's all over the place. There used to be a Hackley school. And when I was growing up, you had many schools in the Muskegon Heights area. And the Muskegon Heights area used to be a very prestigious area. It used to be, Muskegon Heights is now predominantly black. And it's poor economic, and it's high crime, drugs, all that stuff. But it used to be a very prestigious white neighborhood. Muskegon Heights used to be completely white. And there used to be many mansions there, and rich people and all this stuff. And now it's on the economic. The economic is horrible. All the businesses moved out. All the factories have moved out. But it used to be a very rich area, and there's no more elementary schools there. I think there's only one elementary school in Muskegon Heights now, where there used to be 5, 6, 7 elementary schools. And here's an older picture of downtown Muskegon. That's in front of the educational building. Now, this is my favorite building in Muskegon, the educational building, and it's right by Hackley Library. At the top of the educational building, there's a playroom where they have theater and play. I don't believe they do it anymore there, but the playroom is still there. And from time to time, I go into the building and go up there and look at the playroom. And of course, my grandfather knew a lot of these people. My grandfather was an officer in the Air Force, and he made it up higher than officer. My grandfather was a lieutenant. My grandfather was a colonel or a lieutenant colonel, or so he graduated high in the Air Force. He got high up there in the military, and he went through an officer's first program, which I don't know if they have that anymore. So instead of going, the Korean War began, and they had the draft, and I believe the Korean War, the Vietnam War was the last time they used the draft, but the Korean War was drafting. My grandfather thought the right thing to do was to enlist instead of waiting to be drafted, because if you get drafted, you're going to have to go straight into the Army, and so why not get into the Air Force or something else beforehand? So he went into the officer's first program, and he missed World War II by 1 year, and he ended up in the Korean War. And he had a lot of friends. Then he ended up joining Trans World Airlines after that. And a lot of these people, there's a lot of Jumping Joe Bertel is the only known American to have served both the Russian and the American armies in World War II. Yeah, this is a good story. Both deemed him a hero. His convoluted story began when he enlisted in the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles. He was captured by Germans, escaped the prisoner of war camp, and ended up in Moscow, where he was recruited to serve in the Soviet tank battalion. This guy right here has a statue in Russia. He's from Muskegon, Michigan, and he ends up fighting the Germans, and he ends up all the way in Russia with the Russians, and then he gets back over into America, but they have statues of him in Russia, and he's from Muskegon, Michigan. I thought that was fascinating. Then a lot of people don't know this, that there was Nazi prisoners here at one time. There was a salary farm on Getty Street, and the salary farm on Getty Street was they worked Nazis there. Nazis, they came through World War II, came into America, and were sent to POW camps, and they had real Nazis in Muskegon, Michigan, working on a salary farm on Getty Street. And a lot of people don't know about that. They had Nazis working the salary farm. And last night I was talking, last night I was doing the Jameel show, and I was talking about I was talking about what was I talking about? I was talking about Iggy Pop, and Iggy Pop is a musician, and I believe he's from Muskegon. He ended up on the Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack, Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Freddy's Dead. He ended up doing the soundtrack. But he's from Muskegon. Muskegon residents have always been active in various service organizations. On May 25th and 26th, 1936, the city's Rotary International Club members hosted the division conference. It appears to have been a gala event that was enjoyed by all who in attendance. This is a wonderful book. If you want to know more about where Jameel comes from, get this book. Okay. I'm going to get into. I'm probably going to move from this point on to parapsychology. I just keep writing notes. I just got notes. I just keep going over note after note, and I forget what I've learned, and I have to reread them. Just recently, I was teaching myself Russian. I was learning. There's a woman on YouTube that teaches Russian, so I was teaching myself to read Russian. Which is easy. The language is not, speaking it's a different story, but writing it is not as difficult as you think. Not as difficult as it might sound. Okay, now I'm going to move on to, I'm going to get into parapsychology. I'm just trying to make sure I have everything together. Okay, so parapsychology, there's a lot of studies in parapsychology, especially dealing with extrasensory perception, remote viewing, where they give somebody who claims, somebody says, if I say I'm a psychic, I want to study psychic ability, I want to learn psychic activity. They may give me a questionnaire and test me and say, what's going to happen if it's precognition, which is the study of the future. They may ask me what's going to happen on Wall Street. Look at the trends in Wall Street and tell me what you think is going to happen in Wall Street. And a lot of people are tested on that ability. People who are in the stock market, they use psychics. They use parapsychologists all the time to find out what is going to happen in the future. Where is the stock market going? I was studying parapsychology. I learned some very interesting things about how the guys who made Atari were making psychic machines, and they were using them at Chuck E. Cheese. They had Atari built these little machines to help people become better intuitives, and they used to be at Chuck E. Cheese back in the, late 70s or 80s. And parapsychology has led me into channeling, which I speak about channeling a reptilian being. And a lot of people, I have friends who I say that to, and they say that sounds silly. Quit saying that. That sounds silly. How do you channel a reptilian being? I don't even know how to explain it to people. You have different. There's different species throughout the universe. There's different people. There's consciousness is represented in different forms, and you have people. You have people that look like people who aren't human, and you have humans. Then you have a reptilian. There's reptilian species out there in the universe, and it's just like a radio. If you can tune yourself to the signal, you can pick up on it. And if you can pick up on the signal in it used to be called a metaparticle, now it's called a tachyon particle, and that's a psychic signal. A psychic signal, the fastest signal in the universe, is faster than the speed of light. What's her name? Larissa Velenskaya. Larissa Velenskaya has some interviews online that she did back in the 80s concerning firewalking and psychic ability, and she was a psychic from Russia, and she was into faith healing and a lot of different arts. She's one of the best psychics there ever, that's come to the public. And Larissa Velenskaya left behind a large body of work on human brainwaves and human brainwave entrainment. On human brainwave and human brainwave entrainment. And so that's something I'm teaching right now, is channeling. That's something I'm teaching right now, is channeling. And then the 5 points of intelligence I teach. Spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, quantum intelligence, holistic intelligence. And the various speeds of intelligence, mental intelligence. And how you can gather information from the ether around you. There's a lot of younger children coming out right now, and they're online. They're doing presentations online, and people are claiming that these children are indigo children or crystal children. And basically what these children are saying is that they're able to extract information from looking at objects. They can look at a book. They don't have to read the book. They can look at the book, and they can gather information just from looking at the book. I know what they're talking about because I do it all the time. I have the ability of retrocognition, where I can look at a set of photographs, and you don't even have to tell me what's going on. I can look at the photographs, and if the photographs represent the 1970s or 60s or 50s or 40s or 30s, I can absorb information through the photographs, and it's a form of touch. It's a form of touch. When you make contact with your eyes, you touch something. People believe you only touch something when you walk up to something and touch it with your hand. I've touched your shoulder. I'm tapping on your shoulder and saying, hey, you dropped your wallet. That's a form of touch. But you can touch somebody with your eyes. If I touch a picture with my eyes, if my sight touches it and reaches it, I can extract information from it. Now, same thing, so it's an extension. The way to explain this is my sight is a form of extension. I'm extending my energy out to this object and pulling back information. And it's just like if I have a gun, a lot of really skillful shooters will tell you that you always picture the gun. You never look at the gun as being separate than yourself. You picture the gun as being an extension of your arm. A really high quality marksman, a really good marksman, views it just like that. The gun is just, I'm shooting a bullseye, or I'm shooting a target, or I'm shooting I'm hunting, and the gun is an extension. The gun is an extension of me, just like your sight is an extension. And I was doing I was making communication with this reptilian, and this reptilian is a high level. This reptilian communicated to me that it was a high level reptilian, and the reptilian was explaining things to me, and the reptilian was explaining to me that it was speaking to other reptilians about me, and the reptilian was explaining to me through the energy, like I got an upload of energy into me, and the reptilian was explaining to me that you know, we know who you are, that I'm aware of your existence, and I'm watching you. Then the reptilian is connected to my soul group. You have an individual soul. I'm an individual soul. That I'm a part of a much larger soul group of family members and friends and animals and plants. And this high-level reptilian comes from my soul group. I'm connected to this high-level reptilian. And so the high-level reptilian was explaining to me that it used to be a part of a secret society. And it's no longer a part of the secret society. And now it helps individuals. It helps individuals throughout the universe to move forward in their life in the most progressive, positive manner possible. And the reptilian was sending me a lot of information. And I'll just be sitting there and I'll just get information. Just like that. I'll just be sitting there and I'll just get information. And that's what channelers do. There's professional channelers all over the world who some of them make millions of dollars and have large followings. And that's one thing I do is I channel. And people are always channeling. Last night on the Jameel show, I was speaking about how if you're listening to a radio station, you're channeling energy. If I'm looking at something, just like I spoke about touching with my sight, I'm channeling information. And the reptilian was smart too. The reptilian told me, the reptilian gave me some information. The reptilian said, Jameel, one thing that I'm concerned about is don't go and don't be around large groups of people. Don't get involved with a lot of different people, because what you're doing is you're interfering. You're going to end up interfering with the rituals of the other reptilians. He said there's other reptilians that use people and use humans for their own rituals, for their energy rituals. And the reptilian was saying to me, they know who you are and they don't want to hurt you. That we've already made it. He said I've already made an agreement with these reptilians, and they don't want to hurt you. But what they want you to do is they want you to stay away from groups of people. You can do whatever you want to do, but don't go hanging out with too many people and be around too many people on a street level in physical reality. He said you're going to end up interfering because of the knowledge that you have and the information that you have. And you wake people up. It's going to scare some of the reptilians because you're going to interfere with one of their rituals. And so this reptilian was giving me a large quantity of knowledge. I get my notes mixed up. Okay. So this is where I was getting back into extrasensory perception. Now you have the Monroe Institute, which came out with hemisync technology, and they were big into the binaural beats. And there was a project that was released to the public known as Project Centerland, and in that project, they communicated to the public the ability of the psychoenergetic phenomenon. Basically, they're saying the same thing that mystics have been saying for thousands of years. But the theta from this, I was able to extract some knowledge from this information on the theta wave. You have different brain waves: alpha, beta, theta, gamma, and the theta wave makes you extremely psychic and intuitive. Now, I use left brain and right brain thinking just like everybody else, but right brain thinking is something I'm really good at. That's what artists use. That's what makes people artistic. And through the experience of listening to the binaural theta beats, I've been able to train my mind to become more intuitive and more psychic, and fine-tune the psychic signal. And beta waves are used to make somebody intently focused. So if you want to do a study on whatever, on medicine or law or whatever, if you listen to beta waves, it makes you far more focused, hyper-focused. And it's just like classical music does, right? Like classical music even helps plants grow. And you listen to the beta wave music, and you get you hyper-focus on the information, and you get the information much quicker. When you listen to theta sound, I'll just sit there and look at pictures and photographs and sit there and put orchestrations together. What happened at this time? Who are these people? Where are these people from? And if I can feel an energy on me, or I can study an energy, I can train my energy to follow that energy and get the information. I'm sitting here in this room, but my psychoenergetic body, my etheric body, can reach out and get information out of what you call the Akashic records or hyperspace. It's an extension. My energy will extend out into the universe and get the information. Like, okay, let me put this. I'm gonna put this differently as well. I was listening to a psychic one time speak about how he would look at the sun, and he would picture his mind, his consciousness, going through the sun and out to the universe to get information. And that's sort of like how I picture it myself. Not necessarily the sun, but I picture my energy going out into the universe and picking up on information. You want to be of the frequency of the information you're looking at. And now, if you're a lower frequency being and you're involved in nefarious activity or pernicious activity, you're more likely going to get involved with people operating on that frequency. But if you're more open, like if you're somebody who's considerate people and whatnot, those are the types of beings you're going to pull in. Same thing with an Ouija board. I don't own an Ouija board, but I do have a psychic circle that I use. And on my psychic circle, I haven't even started using it yet. I had a Ouija board many years ago when I was a child. I don't practice witchcraft. I'm not into witchcraft, formal witchcraft like ritual. I'm not into any of that stuff. But I'm a psychic and I'm an intuitive. So I have a psychic circle, and I plan on using it to gather information. But more importantly, I just sit there and I just reach out and get the information energetically. And we'll find things out. I can sit there and just meditate on something and figure it out. I got so many notes. And this isn't a device This is pretty cool. This is a device I use in my psychic communication. See how you turn this on? I'll sit here with this device, and if an energy comes my way, I can get an energy reading. And so depending on where I'm at, I know there's a certain amount of electromagnetic energy coming upon me. And this gets into radionics. Now, what's the name of that group? It's the Psychotronic Association of America. This is one of my favorite studies. It gets into Tesla technology, and it's known as the United Psychotronics or Psychotronic Association. This is where Larissa Belinskaya came from. She's from Russia, but she got involved with these people, and basically, this is like beyond the Tesla coil. This is the stuff the FDA doesn't want you knowing about. Almost like the John Hutchison effect, how John Hutchison uses anti-gravity technology, and John Hutchison had a laboratory where he can move objects and bend forks and bend spoons. Human beings have the ability to do this naturally, but through radionics, there's people who can, like Tesla, he would fine-tune the radionics to geometric numbers, and he would start levitating and moving objects. What are they? United Psychotronics Association. This is the stuff the FDA doesn't want you knowing about. Basically, you're utilizing free energy. You can turn on Eric Dollard, Bob Beck, Tom Brown. And these guys were around for years, and they make free energy beyond the Tesla coil type stuff. And they use psychoenergetic. They take sacred geometry designs, and through the sacred geometry designs, they use the natural ether of the room, the hyperspace, to create free energy. Bob Beck at United States Psychotronic Association. Most people have never heard of people like this. Now, John Hutchison is from Canada. And John Hutchison can move objects around like it's nothing. John Hutchison has a laboratory, and he can bend spoons, and he can lift up 100-pound barbells and stuff like that. And go check it out. John Hutchison. Like it's nothing. Saws and drills and stuff. And the reptilians, extra-dimensional beings, and other terrestrial beings that live on Earth with humans, some of these beings can do this stuff without technology. They can manipulate the energy of an object and move it across the table. Some humans can do that. Some humans have the paranormal ability just to start moving objects with their mind. But John Hutchison uses technology to do it, which is very similar. Now, I do some research where I show large stone spheres and stone structures, the stone spheric balls in the Middle East, in the middle, not the Middle East, in Central America, and let me look at them again. Nobody can explain where they came from. They're millions of years old. Somebody was using anti-gravity technology to move those around. That's what I feel. That's what I'm getting from them. I remember one time. I remember one time, and I was in the third grade, and some people showed up. Some people showed up over my mother's house, and it was like a thing. They said they claimed they were working for the school system, the school district, and they were saying that I wasn't going to school on time, and I was going to school. The school was right down the street. I was at school on time, and they were claiming to be there, representing not the teachers, but the school district. And looking back now, the teachers didn't know anything about it. Why am I the only person? There were other children I know there was other children that skipped school all the time, or I showed up to school late. Nobody came to their house. And the school administration, they showed up claiming to be a part of the school administration to see why I wasn't in class on time. And and so I'm sitting there, but they weren't really asking me any questions about it. They were just there at my house before I got home. And I was like, "What the hell's going on? I was like, what's going on?" Now I'm looking back, and I'm like, who are these people? I remember another time. It was a guy, and there was something wrong. This guy looking back at it now, he didn't look like he belonged working with children. And what grade was I in? I was like in the fourth grade, about to go into the fifth grade or something. And this guy showed up over my mother's house in a regular car. Like it was a regular car that people drive around. And it was just like a street. He looked like a construction worker or something. But he took me to the school, and he made it work through my mother. I guess the school talked to my mother or whatever, so he picked me up, and they took me back to one of the elementary schools, and he gave me some Coca-Cola and some animal crackers, and he wanted me to put puzzles together, and all this stuff. I said, and so I said, "You want me to put a puzzle together?" And so I'm putting the puzzles together and stuff. And I always wonder I'm looking back at that kind of stuff now and thinking, what was that about? I didn't seem, and I'm looking at the educational system, and I'm seeing my study of the modern educational system is leading me to believe that the educational system is very backwards. The educational system needs improvement. The educational system needs improvements. I'm looking through some pictures. I guess this might be the end of the presentation. Looking through some pictures right now. Oh, I forgot about this. There's a Stonehenge at the bottom of Lake Michigan. If you type in Lake Michigan Stonehenge, there's supposedly a Stonehenge at the bottom of Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan Stonehenge. I always viewed Lake Michigan, for some reason, every time I've looked at Lake Michigan, I always viewed Lake Michigan as having flying saucers coming out of it. I know that sounds silly, but I just always viewed it like that. Now, my grandmother, back in the 30s, there was a famous unidentified flying object sighting back in the 1930s, and my grandmother saw it. My grandmother's passed away, but my grandmother saw this 1930s flying object, and I remember my grandfather telling me about it. And she told my grandfather that it was just a light in the sky, but it was in Michigan. It was in the 1930s, right in Muskegon, and everybody, thousands of people saw it. And it was an unidentified light traveling. And now I live by the water in Michigan. I see stuff like that all the time. And there's been all kinds of strange sightings over Lake Michigan. Let me think. What else? What else do I think about? Unidentified flying objects, flying saucers. There's something going on with Lake Michigan. Something's different about Lake. There's something going on. I've seen all sorts of strange lights and stuff. Now, my grandfather worked. My grandfather told me some stories. He was explaining to me he was in the Air Force, and he saw some unidentified flying objects, and he was saying they were spheric balls, almost like those stone balls I show. So sphere stones, they were sphere, and he saw it and the other people in his crew, in his cabinets, they all seen the same thing, and it was flying, at high altitude. This object was in high altitude, and he said they've seen this stuff several times in the Air Force. And he was saying what happened was the Air Force pulled him aside and had him describe everything in detail. They pulled everybody aside differently and had them describe everything in detail. And even these individuals weren't with each other when it happened. They all saw it. They all said the same thing. And so I used to talk to my grandfather about extraterrestrials and identifying flying objects. And he would always say the universe is too big for Earth to be the only planet with life. And he was saying, how do you know these objects? How do you know that these unidentified these soft, whatever they are, how do you know that they're not from Earth? There's not people here who are using them. These people could be. You're saying they're extraterrestrials. They might be from Earth. They might be terrestrial. They might be from right here. We just don't know. We just aren't as advanced as they are. And that always stuck with me. And I always used to ask him for information. I said, well, give me some more information about your time in the service. And he would tell me some stuff, but other stuff he wouldn't tell me. And I thought that was strange. I would say, you can't tell. I'm like thinking, I'm your grandson. You can't tell me? And because he's thinking I'm going to go back to school and tell everybody. So he's not going to tell me. But after all these years, you're not even in the service anymore, and you can't give me the information. And I didn't say it like that, but that's what I was thinking of. So I'm always wondering, did he know something more about these flying craft? Did he ever see one in person or something? That's one of the things. I mean, not just see it from the airplane, but see it when it crashed on the ground. And do you ever recover something like that? Yeah. Let's see, Michigan Paranormal. I had an interview where I was interviewing a woman about a ghost at a graveyard on Wood Street. And then I laugh a little bit. A lot of these people are looking for the paranormal, and they really don't want to find anything paranormal. If they did, they'd be scared. They're saying they're looking. A paranormal association is looking for ghosts or evidence of ghosts or whatnot. And if they really found something, I mean, there's all sorts of people recording ghosts and getting the EVP recordings. But if they truly found something paranormal, what would they do? they wouldn't know what to do. They'd be scared. If they started figuring out these are regular people looking for paranormal activity. If they really started figuring out that they didn't have as much control over their environment as they thought they did, and there's something else going on, I think they would go hide under a bed somewhere. A lot of them would. They think they want to know, but they really don't want to know. A lot of them are just bored. A lot of people, I've noticed that in my life. A lot of people think they want to know things, and they think they want to learn about not certain knowledge, and they think they want to discover stuff, and they don't realize they're meddling with things that are beyond their comprehension. They don't really know what they're looking at. They think they want to know, but they don't know the price they're going to have to pay that comes with it. If you really want to know this information, you want to get involved with it, you have to accept the price that's going to come along with what you're doing. If you go meddling into affairs that don't concern you, and you don't know what you're involved with, you better be prepared to deal with what's going to come out of that, because you don't know what you're doing. You believe you know what you're doing, and you're trying to figure something out, but you're putting your energy into the lives and the affairs of these paranormal entities or other people or whatever, and you might not be prepared to deal with what's going to come out of that. You might pay a very terrible price meddling into it, not having the comprehension to know what you're meddling in, wanting to feel superior and wanting to feel like a big man, and you're meddling into something that you have no business meddling into, and you're going to pay a very terrible price. That's what a lot of these researchers don't realize. Michigan Paranormal. That's why I always tell people look into different research subjects. I say, why are you so interested in that? I'm trying to figure it out. Blah, blah, blah. Well, does it really concern you? If it doesn't really concern you, don't get involved in it. You're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. those ghosts might not really be ghosts. You don't know what. Dogmen. That's another subject. Michigan dogmen. Michigan dogmen. Now, I was recently doing a study on werewolves I was studying Hermanubis. And Hermanubis is a mix of Hermes. Hermes that carries the caduceus. Hermes mixed with Anubis creates Hermanubis, and it was a Greek-Roman god. And they have a statue of Hermanubis at the Vatican. And I started studying Hermanubis, and I came across the phenomenon of dogmen. Not the dog god. Hermanubis is a wolf god, wolf mythology. But then you have the dogmen, and then they're saying that these are werewolves that live in Michigan. Almost, basically Bigfoot, a dog version of the Bigfoot. And are they really out there? I would say yes. I would say there's creatures like this out there. They may exist in different dimensions. They may exist in a different dimension that bends with our reality, and sometimes they come in and out, but they're in existence. Michigan Dogman. Legend mystery dog claws. Luther area cabin. Bob Farley may add another verse to his popular song, The Legend. Farley's song about half dog, half man creatures say they have appeared in northwestern lower Michigan every 10 years and are expected to show up again in 1980. Oh, this is the stuff I like. This is fascinating. I'm in Michigan. There may be wolf creatures, wolf people in Michigan. Now, I'm the type of person who might go out trying to find these wolf creatures, but then again, do I really want to? You never know, but wolf people might just start showing up. Wolf people just start showing up. Next thing I know, wolf people are after me. I don't know if I want to mess with that. According to the song, dogmen were first reported near the Manistee River by lumbermen who fled from the area in fright. The creatures are said to have once scared a farmer to death, and in another decade left claw marks on a door 7 feet above the ground. An updated version of the legend could include an incident this week near Luther where a resident returned home to find claw and teeth marks on his door. It fits in real smooth conservation officer. It fits in real smooth joked conservation officer Ron McCarty of the Department of Natural Resources Baldwin Field office, which investigated the incident. See, that's fascinating to me because the environmental protection agencies, they have more authority than regular police. Environmental protection groups, other like the natural resources departments, they have more. They can do more than regular police, even more than federal agents. The natural resources people don't need a warrant. They don't need anything. They can just show up and search you and do everything they want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. They just got it like that, and they stand for the environment, and you're in their environment, and their job is to police the environment. But this is interesting because I've never heard this before. This story. Lower Michigan. McCarty said while the resident first believed the marks may have been made by a bear, DNR officers are sure they are from a dog. The marks don't show it was 7 feet tall, said McCarthy, laughing. I didn't go out there, so all my information is secondhand, McCarty said. From what I've been told, where there was no trouble convincing people who owned the place it was a dog. McCarty said the animal chewed up the door jams and left the claw marks on 2 doors. See, a lot of people, again, this is getting into the paranormal, and the human mind can only go. The human mind, in average society, the human mind is not trained to accept these realities or accept this type of information. A lot of people can lose their minds and go crazy from seeing something like that. They can end up crazy for the rest of their lives. Fortunately, I have a very strong mind, so. But I feel that a lot of people would come across something like this, and a dog man, and that'd be it. They'd be finished psychologically. While the resident may be convinced the dog is responsible, he apparently also is aware the incident is the stuff the legend is made of. He called us. And see, these dog people, these dog creatures, you know, they probably look, they're probably just as intelligent as regular people are, most likely more intelligent. And they're probably looking at what humans are doing. They're probably saying, I don't, you think I want you to know I'm a dog person, and you know, what are you going to do, call the police on me? You know what I mean? They're watching humans, they're watching how humans act, and they're reading the newspapers, and they're seeing other, they don't want to be involved with humans. They're going to hide. He called us, said Tom's, of Wittem Radio, Traverse City. He called us, said Thomas Fransky of Witch Radio in Traverse City, which began airing Fairly Song early this year. We kind of tied it together in a light fashion. So Fransky said, which reported the incident during his new broadcast Wednesday, and also played the legend during the day. People are always asking for the same song. So these people are out here looking for dog people. That's one thing I don't get about people. That's one thing I don't. Why are they looking for the dog? It's fascinating. It's research the subject. But why would you go looking for a dog person? You don't know anything about these creatures. You haven't formally been invited to meet. They haven't invited you. I look at it like this: Did these dog people invite me? If I was not invited, I'm not going to be there. So if the dog people aren't going to invite me, I'm not going to go into the woods looking for them. I want an invitation so I know I'm safe. Give me an invitation so I can feel safe. Then I can meet the dog people. But I'm not a moron. I'm not going to go running around looking for dog people. I don't know what I'm getting involved with. I'm going to end up in a really rough situation. You dog people aren't as stupid as you think. But with flying saucers, it's different. You can sit back and watch them from the ground. That's a feeling of safety. But then you have the work cats. You got dog people. The work cats. Now the work cats. Now you have werewolves. Okay, the dog people are werewolves. Then you have work cats, like from the movie Sleepwalkers. Okay, dog. Michigan Dog. It just comes up as Michigan Dogman. Sleepwalkers, a 1992 film. This is one of my favorite movies. I'm gonna watch this film tonight. Whereas this guy and his mother, and I don't even know if it really is his mother or not. But he's a cat. He's a work cat. Stephen King movie. He's a work cat. His name is Charles in the movie. In the beginning of the movie, they give a definition for the work cats, but it's a real definition. Let me see if I can find it. Cat. And that song in the movie is one of the best songs. See, this gets into occult investigations. I consider myself an occult investigator. So these are occult investigations. And where's the encyclopedia? Let me see. Word cat. How am I? So if I want to discover, so I'm doing an occult investigation on the word cats. We want to find out where the word cats are. I've seen it, where they live, everything. I know everything about the word cats. And we'll have a big. We'll find out where the word cats are. We'll have a picture of the top word cat and have all the lower word cats and all that stuff. Know where they live and everything. Word cat. The not the occult, it's like esoterica, esoterica Latin, right? Esoterica and encyclopedia, word cat, encyclopedia of esoterica, the encyclopedia of esoterica. So if you want to be an occult researcher, you got to learn how to do occult investigations. Word cats. Sort of like in those movies where, you know how somebody's looking for vampires and they go into the bookstore and they say, give me every book you got on the vampires. And they'll have an old book, which is an old encyclopedia of the esoteric. Ah, here it is. Encyclopedia of Arcane Knowledge. There we go. The site can't be reached. The site cannot be reached. the hell? Excuse my language. What is an encyclopedia of arcane knowledge? Encyclopedia of superstitions, folklore, occult sciences. Will it have anything about the word cat? Using glamour and various other phases of arcane knowledge for beneficent purposes. This is a West African rain-making scene of priests from Toulouse. That is word cats. Where are the word cats at? Anyhow, I'm not going to trip over it. I'm not going to spend too much time. We could find it. If I sat down here and looked for a long time, I could find it. That's basically what you're looking for. You come across Encyclopedia of Arcane Knowledge and Esoteric. There's a lot of good occult bookstores. Ooh, we found it. I found it. Sleepwalker, nomadic shape-shifting creatures with human and feline origins, vulnerable to the deadly scratch of the cat. The sleepwalker feeds upon the life force of virginal human females, probable source of the vampire legend. And so, Chillicothe Encyclopedia of Arcane Knowledge, first edition, 1884. See, that's the same definition they put in the beginning of the movie. Now that's a book I'll buy. Encyclopedia of Arcane Knowledge. And then I'll sit there for weeks reading the book and cross-referencing and learning everything about it. And I'll end up going out and talking to people about werewolf sightings, and next thing you know, I'll have a bunch of werewolves after me. Next thing you know, there'll be a whole group of werewolves after me. One of my favorite movies is Rosemary's Baby. Let me see. What's that book in Rosemary's Baby? Rosemary's Baby is a movie I love. I love older movies. My favorite movies are from the 1960s, and a lot of the movies in the 1960s were top line movies. They were well written. Now, Rosemary's Baby, of course, was written by Roman Polanski, which Roman Polanski is a wonderful director. Roman Polanski also did Dance of the Vampires, which is one of my favorite movies. Dance of the Vampires. It's one of my favorite movies. Roman Polanski did that movie, and Roman Polanski did Rosemary's Baby. And Rosemary's Baby, the soundtrack is phenomenal. And it's a funny movie. The thing about Rosemary's Baby is you're talking about, again, you see the reptilian in the movie. The reptilian was trying to get Rosemary pregnant. She was supposed to have the devil's child or Satan's child. And she gets duped into a witch coven. and the Witch Coven was running a group of filmmakers and actors that did stage plays. They were putting this man was getting invited to be an actor, and he was getting into motion pictures, and so the Witch Coven used him to bring in Rosemary, and they wanted Rosemary to believe she was crazy, and so they were putting all sorts of potions and feeding her potions and all this stuff, and they were preparing her. And when she was asleep, they were all having sex with her, like an orgy. And they wanted her to bring in the devil's child. But there's a lot of comedy scenes in the movie. And a good horror, and a really good horror movie has comedy in it. If you're watching a horror movie and there's no comedy in there, you're going to have a really bad night. Really good film directors know to always put a little comedy in a really good horror movie. And European film directors are some of the best film directors. I think that's why Roman Polanski, of course, is Polish. And, you know, in America, everybody wants to be an actor. Just like, what's his name? Who's the guy that did War of the Worlds? Orson Welles. Orson Welles did an interview in the 1960s, and Orson Welles said in his interview, he told a group of French actors and French directors, he said, in America, everybody wants to be an actor. Nobody wants to be a director. In France, everybody wants to be a director, and nobody wants to be an actor. So in Europe, everybody's doing directing and producing. In America, everybody just wants to be the actors, right? And so Roman Polanski, wonderful director from Europe, he put this together, and Rosemary's Baby, with Mia Farrow. Mia Farrow is a wonderful actress. And that's a beautiful scene of New York City. New York City in the 1960s. That's a beautiful scene. I don't know how older people who lived around that can be in today's world and not miss living at that time. That's what Rosemary's Baby, United Mental Force. Okay, so Rosemary had a dictionary. And this is all of them witches. There it is. I want the book. I have to have this book. There's no other. There's no way out. I have to buy the book. I have to buy the book. All of them witches. This is the book from Rosemary's Baby, and it shows a dragon biting its tail. The dragon's tail. That's a very powerful occult symbol. Anytime you see a snake biting its tail or a dragon biting its tail, it's a very powerful occult symbol. And the book appears to be written by J.R. Houselet, All of Them Witches. And in the book, it talks about how they use United Mental Force against Rosemary. And Rosemary's friend, the older man, he knew what was going on. And they got rid of him. And they're like, these people are like vultures preying on Rosemary. Rosemary is a young, beautiful woman, Mia Farrow. And Mia Farrow wasn't Mia Farrow with Frank Sinatra? I believe Mia Farrow was pretty, wasn't she? See, when it comes, I always compare Mia Farrow to who did the movie. Another film of mine, one of my favorite films, Wait Until Dark. Yeah, Mia Farrow was with Frank Sinatra. Of course. Frankie, baby. Frank Sinatra, Mia Farrow. Okay, so Mia Farrow, Frank Sinatra. But who did Wait Until Dark? Wait Until Dark. Audrey Hepburn. I don't know why I always forget. Audrey Hepburn. So I always compare Mia Farrow to Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn she was very interesting. Her face and her facial features, all that stuff. And then Mia Farrow. So as far as sight, I would say, what is more preferable to sight, Mia Farrow or Audrey Hepburn? Who's the better actor? But that book, I gotta get that book. Occult. What happened to Rosemary was an occult crime. Rosemary's Baby book. All of them witches. God, I always go back. I love watching stuff like this, old stuff like this from the 60s. My favorite place, the place that I get the most calming feeling from, the most euphoric place, I think of the Hollywood area in the 1960s and the music and stuff in the movies. It's very, very mysterious, very interesting place. I don't like films from the I grew up in the 90s, so I watched the early 90s films. I talk about that, but the films from the 60s, some of the best films. And that's a certain level of prestige in the occult world. When you're talking about Hollywood and you get into occult research and stuff and magic on it, that's a whole different world. That's a whole different world out in that area. I mean, talking about back then, at that time. These people made some of the best movies that ever hit the world. You have to respect that. Rosemary's Baby. All of them, which I have to have this book. I'm the type of person like Rosemary. I'm the type of person I would, if I, as soon as I got to the apartment, I saw something was wrong, I would have got the hell out. If I was living in an apartment and it was the other way around, and it was a pretty woman, and she would say, "Oh, stay and drink the potions and all that stuff," I'd be gone. As soon as I feel there's something wrong, I'm gone. I'm running across highway. I'm running across streets in broad daylight. I'm jumping in cars and stuff. I'm gone. I'm gonna create the biggest scene I can and get the hell out. If I even feel something's wrong, people are being too nice to her and giving her all that potion. Okay, so Rosemary's Baby. What other movies are in the 1960s? Yeah, Elvis played a lot of movies. Elvis played a lot of movies in the 60s. And the script was so well written. The script makes the film. And very often you'll never see the script writer at the movie scene. Unless, of course, the script writer is the director. But once a script is written, it's written. And the writer doesn't need to be anywhere near the film. But the best scripts that I feel came out in the 1960s. They don't use enough. There's thousands of words that have been gone. In America, there's thousands of words that have been taken out of the language. And at that time, you still had an immense amount of words. Like, you don't ever hear people say things like quid pro quo, this for that, let's exchange. There's all kinds of words you don't hear anymore. In the films back then, you get stimulated. Conversation, I always say conversation brings stimulation. Words stimulate you and provoke you to do more thinking. And those films at that time push people to think more. Alfred Hitchcock, that's one of my favorite. My mother, my mother, my mother showed me who Alfred Hitchcock was, and Alfred Hitchcock, boy, Alfred Hitchcock was in a film. I saw Alfred Hitchcock, in one film called Mondo Hollywood, a big 1960s film, and he played a part in Mondo Hollywood, a very small part. And when I seen that, that really stuck with me, right? And I went back, I started looking more into Alfred Hitchcock. You had the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, which was a TV series. Then you had the Alfred Hitchcock movies. And there was one episode he did on his TV series that scared me. It really scared me. He did a series where there was a guy in prison. He was in a penitentiary, and it was in a work camp. It was like an honor camp. Back at that time, this is like, probably in the 40s, or no, the 50s when they did the film, did the series. And at that time, you had honor camps. You had city jails, and city jails had honor camps. And it wasn't about institutionalizing individuals, about working individuals. You're at my jail, you're going to do some farming work and whatnot. And so they had him at the honor camp, and he was rich. And he wanted to get it. He didn't want to be in jail, right? Of course. So he made a deal with one of the caretakers, the guy who did the mortuary, the embalming, who dug the graves. He made a deal with the guy that he's going to pretend like he's dead. Or no, he's not going to pretend like he's dead. They already had a dead guy, and they're going to put the guy in the casket and take him over to the graveyard. So what happened was the guy got in the casket with the dead body, and the grave digger was supposed to dig him back up and get him out. And you got to be crazy to do that, to allow somebody to put you into the ground while you're still alive. And so he did it, and he paid the guy, and he kept lighting matches, thinking like, when's this guy gonna dig me out? When's this guy gonna dig me out? And he rolled over and saw the body of the corpse that was in the casket with him that he was using to get out, and it was the guy that he paid to get him out. He looks at the body, flicks a match, and wait a minute, that's the guy who's supposed to dig me out of here. And I was like, man, Alfred Hitchcock, to this day, that's to this day, Alfred Hitchcock, you watch his stuff, it's still brilliant. And I spent so many years. I spent so many years wanting to talk to older people. I used to go. I used to spend. That's all I wanted to know was about the 1960s and hear about the stories and the scripts that were written and the books. I always wanted to talk to the older people that were in their 80s and 90s. And I remember one day I was in I was in I remember one day I was in Beverly Hills and there was a tour company and I knew the tour company. I knew the guy who owned the tour company and I knew all the people. And I was in Beverly Hills and it was a group of older men in Beverly Hills and they were playing golf and they were all in their 80s. And I waved at them. They all waved back at me. And I didn't think they were going to wave at me. I thought they were going to be like arrogant, whatnot. And what I realized is I'm looking at these guys. I'm saying, man, these are the guys that run Beverly Hills. These guys run Beverly Hills. And I would go up to people like this and just ask them questions about the 1960s and stuff. And some of them would sit down and explain stuff to me. And one guy, he was an older man. He was like in his late 80s. And he was saying, well, where are you from? I said, Michigan. He said, yeah. He said, you know, a lot of us in Beverly Hills aren't necessarily involved with the motion picture industry. He was saying a lot of our money comes from oil. My family came here in the early 1900s, and we had oil rigs, and we got the oil out of the area, and we earned our wealth building ourselves up through the oil industry, and we've never had anything to do with motion pictures. We've just been oil people. And I said, and he said, a lot of these people, a lot of my friends were in the oil business. We don't know anything. He said, we met people in the movie industry, but we don't know anything about it. We're in the oil business. We've been in the oil business. And I'm thinking, the oil business in Beverly Hills. And so I'm sitting there talking to him, and he's explaining all this stuff to me. And he's saying, you're from Michigan? I'm saying, yeah. And so I say, so you were here? And I said, what? Can you explain to me, you know, about the 1960s and all that stuff? And he, you know, he was very generous, but he didn't carry himself arrogantly, or he didn't even carry himself like he was rich. That's how I knew he had money, because those older guys who have a lot of money, they don't wear a lot of jewelry and fancy stuff. You may know through the brand of their clothing. The brand of their clothing will show you. Or they may have a pinky ring or something, you know, they might. But in general, those older guys who are rich, they don't really talk about money, and they live like they don't really need money. Like, you'll never know who they are. And you're thinking, you'll see somebody in a three-piece suit with slick back hair driving, you know, on road. You see some guy on Rodeo Drive driving a Lamborghini, and you think, man, that's the guy who runs everything. Blah, blah. That's not the guy who runs everything. The guy who runs everything is going to be some old man wearing some old moldy sweater or something. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. The guy running everything is some old man, and you don't know who he is. And you know, you probably pass him every day, and you know what I mean? That's... I used to sit there for hours, man. All these old guys, all these really old guys all these really old guys would talk to me, and I used to go into all the stores and stuff like that. And I'd sit there and just talk to them for hours and hours and hours about like Jack Benny and Lucille Ball. And Jack Benny used to live right next to Lucille Ball, and they'd be like, you know, why are you so interested in all that stuff? I was like, I don't know, I'm just interested. I just like the 1960s. And it would be cool because sometimes I'd be sitting there talking to them, and for a moment they would forget they were even in today's world. I would take them back. I would take them back to like this. I'd take them back to like the summer of '63, and he'd be like, "Man, yeah, Jack Benny used to live over there, and we used to do and we had, you know, that was back in '54 when I had the Rolls Royce and all this stuff." And I'd be sitting there listening to them, and like I'd be bringing them back to life. I'd be bringing them back. I was bringing the older people back to life, and they were remembering the younger years they had. And I would know so much. They'd be like, how do you know about all this? I'm like, man, I just read like 10 books on it. You know, I just read like 10 books and listened to 20 interviews and made 50 phone calls. And I go over, there was one place, there was one restaurant I go to, like, man, I remember one time I was hanging out and I was going there like every day, and like the old people got used to me being there and stuff, and they would be like, and I'd just be hanging out and stuff like that, and I'd just be hanging out there with like all old men and stuff, and they were telling me all about the oil industry and the lumber industry, I would be telling about the lumber industry from Michigan. And I just walk up and down there I just walk up and down, just there was and they were just like, oh, it's Jameel. And tour guides were, I knew all the tour guides and all that stuff, and they'd be like, man, they were like, when are you coming back, blah blah blah. And because there used to be, you had Hollywood, but then you had Hollywood Land. And a lot of people don't know Hollywood Land came down back in the 1930s in a landslide. When you look at the Hollywood sign, that's Hollywood. Then there was Hollywood Land. The land came down in a landslide, and Hollywood Land, they didn't have. They used to make movies. They used to make houses without the roofs to get natural sunlight in order to make the films. A lot of people don't know that they would make films using natural sunlight, and uh, and that's why the motion picture industry became so big in California, is because they didn't need electricity. They didn't have electricity for one. Not in 1910. They didn't have it, so they used natural sunlight. And they were so kind to me. They were really friendly to me. They always made sure I got home, that I could hang out and do what I wanted to do and research and go home. Um, The Nutty Professor, the older Nutty Professor, Jerry Lewis. And they used to make so many. These guys. Let me look. What was films? 1960s films. Village of the Damned. That's a strange film. The artwork in these older films was so much better. 1960s artwork in the film was good. The 1930s films were some of my favorites. Now there's a 1930 film with Drew Barrymore's grandfather named Lionel Barrymore, and I spoke about this on Jameel's show last night. Lionel Barrymore is one of my favorite actors, next to House of Wax. Why am I forgetting? Well, Vincent Price. Lionel Barrymore is one of my favorite actors next to Vincent Price. And Lionel Barrymore played in Devil Doll, which is one of the best films that ever came out of Hollywood. And it was about a man who was put in prison for a crime he did not commit, and he learned a secret formula to shrink people, and he could shrink dogs and shrink all kinds of people. And the graphics were so good in Devil Doll. The graphics were so good. That was a 1930s movie. It came out straight out of Hollywood. And it was one of the best movies I've ever seen. And looking at the movie, how did they do that in 1930s? I'm watching Terminator 2 today. And Terminator 2's graphics still blow you away today. But how did they do that in 1930s? Go back and watch. And this is what I talked to all those older guys who ran all the shops and stuff like that, and old men and stuff, and they would all know who Lionel Barrymore was. And Drew Barrymore did the film Firestarter, again at Parapsychology. Vincent Price. Vincent Price is a really good actor. He reminds me a lot of Anthony Perkins. Who played in Psycho? Anthony Perkins. Is that how you say his name? Anthony Perkins. Father was an actor as well. Yeah, Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins. And Psycho, of course, was an Alfred Hitchcock film. Then you got other movies, like The Mac. The Mac with Max Julian, with Richard Pryor, where The Mac is one of my favorite films, too. The Mac was a pimp. It starts out the Mac got into a shootout, a firefight in a junkyard. And the Mac goes to the penitentiary for 5 years. He gets out, and it's filmed in Oakland, California. So it's Max Julian and Richard Pryor, And the movie's based on a true story about the Ward brothers. The Ward brothers were famous pimps in Oakland back in the 1970s. And when people talk about the movie The Mac, you have to recognize the street culture of Oakland, California. See, in today's world, when today's world, you don't have actual real pimps anymore. Not like you did at that time. In today's world, you have people who might be involved in like what they call it, white slavery, or human trafficking, or not human trafficking, pandering. You say it's pandering or human trafficking. Those guys back then, they were pimps, but you don't have that in today's world. Those guys went to the players' balls and they had big trophies, pimp trophies and stuff like that, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And these guys would dress up in all these colors and all this stuff, all this crazy clothes. And so the movie The Mac. In the movie The Mac, there was a feud between the pimps in Oakland and the Black Panther Party. You had the Ward brothers, who were real pimps in Oakland, and you had the Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party wanted to get the pimps off the streets, and they wanted to get the drugs off the streets. Like if the Black Panther Party saw a young guy selling some drugs, a young African American guy, young black guy selling drugs, sometimes they would kidnap the guy and take them somewhere and reprogram them and have them selling bean pies or something like, you know what I mean? They would have them doing something like that. And so there was a feud in Oakland between the Black Panther Party and the Ward brothers. And the Ward brothers were in the film, and those were the biggest pimps at that time in Oakland, right? And my father was living in California at one time. My father was actually seeing Miss Black America at one time, and it was a long story, but he ended up. I'm very familiar. When you talk about these old guys, these old pimps who got, the white walls on the car and stuff. Like I'm very familiar with that lifestyle. How these guys would they would go on cross country pimp tours all across the country and stuff. Frank Ward, and nobody knows what actually happened to him. The Ward brothers ended up. One of my favorite movies, uh, Mad, Mad, Mad World. That's one of my favorite movies, Mad, Mad, Mad World. Mad, Mad, Mad World. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite movies. How they say the treasure's going to be under a big W. And the woman, her sons, are beating it. In the movie in the 1950s, in the 50s, you had beating it. And they're all over the Mojave Desert looking for money. What's the name of this? Captain Colt, Tracy Spencer Tracy. Captain C.G. Culpepper. This is a good movie. A lot of people in today's world see an old movie like this and they get bored watching it and stuff. These were good movies. Now, the comedies that came out, Laurel and Hardy was a wonderful set of comedies that came out in the early 1900s that inspired, that led up to films like this. It was guys like Laurel and Hardy and Harold Lloyd and all those old comedians that led up to these great films. Charlie Chaplin. I like Charlie Chaplin. I like Charlie Chaplin's movie, The Dictator, or it's got The Great Dictator. What is it? Charlie Chaplin, The Dictator, or The Great Dictator. That was a good movie. But my favorite was always Laurel and Hardy. Yeah. Yeah, Charlie Chaplin, The Great Dictator. I'm going back to, one day I'm going back to to walk around and stuff. I used to love to go and look at all these. They did the movie The Great Dictator, and they were depicting Adolf Hitler before the war even ended. In 1940, Charlie Chaplin was depicting Adolf Hitler, and they were showing the world what was going to happen. Hollywood does three things: they show you what did happen, what's happening, what's going to happen. And I respect the films in today's world. I respect the actors and the directors and the producers. I just can't get into them, though. I still watch the films that came out of the 90s, but when it gets in today's world films, I just can't do it. I don't know what it is. There was one film I used to watch when I was younger that came out in my time. What was it called? The Professional. The Professional. With Leon, and he's with that little girl, and he saves her and her family. He's basically a professional killer, but he's really not that bad of a guy. He's just misunderstood, and he immigrated to the country, and the girl's family. He didn't kill the girl's family. The girl's family ends up getting killed, almost like the movie, kind of like the movie Gloria. Have you ever seen the movie Gloria? It's similar. The original Gloria is my favorite. Gloria came out in 19. If you have not seen the movie Gloria, you need to see it. But The Professional is similar to the movie Gloria. And so she gets away, and this older guy, he's kind of basically her protector or whatever. And these bad guys are trying to get to her, and he's helping out. I remember that was all right movie. That was all right. Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean. That's an interesting film. I've never really been interested in James Dean. I did see Rebel Without a Cause. I was never really interested in James Dean. I was more interested in James Dean. Reminded me, of course, of Arthur. The first character I've seen like him was Arthur Fonzarelli, which played in Happy Days, Henry Winkler, right? And then later on, I saw James Dean. I seen that James Dean and Henry Winkler. I mean, James Dean and or the guy he plays in Rebel Without a Cause was similar to the Fonz in Happy Days, but how did he die? Car accident? They said he died in a car accident. They said he died in a car accident. You never know what happened, but that's the 1950s film. Marilyn Monroe. Some Like It Hot. That was the Marilyn Monroe film. I was never very interested in that, but one of my favorite magazines was Pulp International. Now, when you're talking about, I don't know how I got on this subject. We start talking about films, but Pulp International is like the Confidential magazine that Hollywood was putting out. Pulp. It's Pulp International. Yeah, Pulp International. Pulp International. It was like the Playboy of Playboys of Hollywood, but Pulp International wasn't as popular as Confidential. At least I wasn't there in that time, so I have limited place in that debate, but I mean, I used to sit back and just read. I used to sit back and read stories that would happen, and try to find out what really happened. Try to find phone records from the 1950s and stuff, and ask people like, "Man, what really happened in 1951?" Was there really a little old lady from Pasadena? Type. What's JFK doing about Russia's secret death ray bomb? Why Maryland is a misfit for marriage? How red agents operated inside the White House? Hmm. Hitler is still alive. These are all old. These are all old magazines. This is the National Police Gazette. Hmm. And the reptilians are all in the movies. That's one thing I like about the motion picture industry. Is reptilians are all in the old movies, 1950s. People say you're talking about Jameel. You're talking about channeling reptilians. They've been putting reptilians in films. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Let me go back to the Creature from the Black Lagoon. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That was a reptilian creature. Oh, the Creature from the Black Lagoon. There's a movie I watched recently called The Killer Shrews. And the Killer Shrews, they use real dogs, but in the movie, it's an old movie. And they use real dogs, but they put costumes on the dogs. They put cat costumes on the dogs, and the dogs. It's crazy. Let me Google it. The Killer Shrews, 1959. And these are real dogs, and they put costumes on the dogs. I never seen anything like that before. Real dogs, and they put costumes on the dogs. And there's dogs running around that can't. The dogs, of course, can't see. So much for animal rights. At that time they didn't have animal. In today's world, you know, they would say something about it. Cat costumes on dogs. The Killer Shrews. Creature from the Black Lagoon. 1950s. Let's look at 1950s horror movie. There were some crazy movies that came out in 1950. Those are some of my favorite films. Invasion of the Saucermen, The Headless Ghost, Screaming Skull. The artwork was the best. They made the posters look so attractive. Posters today don't look darn. The posters at that time were much better. That's just the way it is. There's no way out of it. Because MGM, let me see. MGM, 1950. I think MGM is my favorite. Metro and Goldwyn. No, then you have Warner Brothers. Oh, Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers is four real brothers, right? Or, yeah, Harry Warner. Let me type in who were the Warner Brothers. Albert Warner, Sam Warner, Harry Warner, Jack L. Warner. The Warner Brothers. The Warner Brothers 1950s poster, film poster. Anyhow, so I just wanted to sit back and explain a little bit about my research and stuff I was working on. Now, in the future, I'm going to be doing some channeling sessions with reptilians. And again, I encourage people to look at, to begin studying. Oh, I almost forgot. Now, these are my cards that I use to help people to gain more psychic ability. These are parapsychological cards. And then what I do is hold this up. And you say, what's on the other side? Cards. And they're not show cards. They're not marked. These aren't marked show cards, you know, whatever. These are real parapsychology cards. You know, you hold this up. And you can sit there with somebody and you can build your psychic intuitive ability. So these are cards. Of course, I got all kinds of old cards. I used to have all sorts of business cards. This is an older one. It's a chakra system and whatnot. Emotional and spiritual healing, chakra clearing, treatment through crystal stones, oil massage, lucid dreaming, kundalini energy, astral projection. And I'd show the people on the card. They say, "What are you talking about? Extrasensory perception." I say, "This is, Google this card." ET genetics. I have cards that say ET genetics in humans on the streets. For women, massage for women, women only. Women only. I'm not. It's not nothing against men, but aura reading, chakra clearing, deep tissue oil massage for women, channeling frequency, lucid dreaming, Kabbalah, dream interpretation, guided meditation, astral projection, ET genetics in human, illumination of inner light. I like the old movie art with the ants and all this stuff. The movie The Ant. And so that's it. I just wanted to speak on some of my research. I keep looking through here for leads, movie posters to speak on. But that's basically it. I just wanted to speak a little bit on some of my research and my readings and the material